as I mentioned, one of the biggest news items, at least in 2018, surrounding gambling was what went on with sports betting. And so back on May 14th, the Supreme Court overturned the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, which basically what that act had done was banned sports betting outside of Nevada. I think there was one other state that was carved out that hadn't used their carve out. So that happened back in May, and we've seen some states move to legalize. About 9 states are currently legal, but there hasn't been quite as much movement as maybe some had hoped for. Part of that has to do with the way the legislative calendars line up with a lot of these states. So it's because that federal ban on sports betting through PASPA was lifted by the Supreme Court. We still have to have legalization come at the state level, and most state legislative calendars kind of tend to wind down at the end of May, and it takes a little bit of a process to work through the bill making kind of machinery. So I think with state legislatures starting to come back into session here at the end of January, beginning of February, we might see some movement on continued legalization. Let's give you some context on the size of the sports betting market. $4.9 billion was bet at Las Vegas sports books in 2017. And some estimates on the size of the illegal gambling market are as high as $150 billion, although based on what I've seen, I think around $70 billion is probably more reasonable. Asid, kind of, what are your thoughts kind of on these early days of how sports betting has emerged and kind of the regulatory environment we're looking like that?
So as we go forward, some of the states which traditionally have gambling operations have been the first to pass through their legislatures the mechanisms for gambling. Mississippi is one, which you'll be very familiar with, obviously. New Jersey, they very quickly moved in 2018 to allow the sports betting. One of the things I'm looking at is this possibility of a federal bill coming up. The Sports Wagering Market Integrity Act of 2018 was sponsored by Senators Orrin Hatch and Chuck Schumer. Of course, Senator Hatch retired in December, so the bill has to be reintroduced in Congress. Now, what I've read is many people in the industry don't think that the federal regulation is going to amount to much after the SCOTUS decision, but 2 of the big online sports betting or online betting outfits, DraftKings and FanDuel, are certainly monitoring this very carefully, and DraftKings is making preparations just in case. A recent filing shows that they have engaged 2 lobbying firms to, quote, educate policymakers on issues related to fantasy sports and sports wagering, end quote. So as far as the daily fantasy sports getting into this sports betting, they are already moving in, and I think that they will work with influencing the policy debate if there is any. But to me, it seems that this is moving forward and more states will adopt this year.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I think it's a battle that's going to continue to play out. Something to call out there is Sheldon Adelson, who is the leader of Las Vegas Sands, which is another casino operator. He's also a heavy political donor and is a heavy supporter of the Coalition to Stop Internet Gaming. So he has kind of a lobbying special interest organization there. So it's going to be interesting to see the battle between kind of him and kind of his folks on his side of the debate, kind of wanting to kind of put a wall around how large internet gaming can be, along with these new upstarts like you mentioned, DraftKings and FanDuel. And as we look to how sports betting has played out in this first year, our best data is really coming out of New Jersey. As you mentioned, they had some existing gaming operations. New Jersey was the force behind the Supreme Court case. The original name of the Supreme Court case was Christie versus NCAA. Christie being Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey at the time when that case was brought. So New Jersey was really Johnny on the spot with bringing this online. And just in the first 6 months of sports wagering in New Jersey, we've seen $928 million of wagers placed. And to give that some context, that's about half of what Nevada puts together in $1.8 billion in the first 6 months. That's about half of the amount of sports bets placed in Nevada, which considering this is coming only 6 months, with infrastructure not being in place until after May, it really has ramped up in a very, very speedy fashion. And then it looks like there could be some more upside. You mentioned DraftKings and FanDuel, and this is an important thing to call out. Of the amount of bets placed on sports in New Jersey, of the revenue collected, about 2/3 of that sports betting revenue has accrued to sports books affiliated with DraftKings and FanDuel. So these have been very influential players in kind of driving traffic there. And there's a few reasons behind that. Of course, they have an existing user base of folks who are comfortable putting money on the line to kind of make decisions surrounding sports that are sports fans, and they already have an app in place. Asit, what are your kind of thoughts here so far on how these DraftKings and FanDuel and these other online operators have really been able to capture a larger share of the market than your existing legacy casino players?
Well, I think the brand familiarity that you mentioned is a big one. That these both of these companies have loyal followings who've put money, made deposits with the companies, been able to withdraw money on their winnings. That is very important to the online wagerer, if I can use an antiquated term. This kind of familiarity with your sports book, the place where you go and place your bets, collect your winnings, and your trust in that, be it a retail or physical location or online, is extremely important in the industry, as you can imagine. So I think they've got this edge. I want to call out a stat that you brought to my attention, which this is amazing. More than 72% of money wagered on sports in New Jersey in November came via mobile and online platforms. And Nick, I've got your numbers right here. $21.2 million in overall revenue. $14.4 million of that was online revenue versus $6.8 million in retail. So like we see with many other industries that we discuss, if you make it easy for someone to do something online, it doesn't matter what it is. People are going to come. It's very easy to move money. And it is one of the more compulsive industries. I usually talk about compulsive industries in terms of Starbucks and coffee, but this is that amplified many magnitudes. And as you say, be responsible if you try out online wagering and do it as a hobby. One thing that I'm very interested in the coming months and years also is what I call capabilities crossover. So far, DraftKings, FanDuel, and a couple of smaller competitors don't have physical presences. Now, we've seen since the SCOTUS ruling that FanDuel has opened a sports book in Meadowlands Racetrack in New Jersey, and DraftKings has opened one in Resorts Casino Hotel in New Jersey, and also at Scarlet Pearl Casino Resort, which I believe is in Mississippi. So as these companies decide that a physical presence will enhance their offerings, by the same token, some of the larger traditional casino players like MGM, like Caesars, are looking to partner up with smaller companies and also extend their own online capabilities and cross over the other way. That is to go from a capital intensive economic structure to something that's capital light. So I think both of these types of wagering facilities are going to learn from each other, and we'll see lots of partnering. We'll see lots of M&A. Just curious your thoughts on how that will fold out.
Yeah, I said for me, at the end of the day, I think in the states where mobile wagering is legal, it's going to capture an outsized share of the market, as we saw in New Jersey. The question I have on my mind is how many states are going to legalize mobile and online betting? You're going to have concerns of how do we verify the age of the gambler? Do we really want everyone being able to place bets on sports any place in the world, or do we want to confine it to a smaller arena? So in Mississippi, you have sports betting, for example, confined only to on-site locations, and it's going to be interesting to see how the regulatory framework plays out from state to state. So I think it's a little bit of a wait and see here. I do think the states that do allow online and mobile betting will probably have a quicker uptake on the amount wagered there. I do think for sure what we're going to see is sports betting become a larger subset of kind of how people consume sports. So you're already seeing on like ESPN, for example, Scott Van Pelt on his SportsCenter show has the Bad Beats segment that he'll do every night and things like that. So we're having that come into more of how sports are covered. And Deloitte had some numbers out. I sent these out on our end of the year show for IF that Deloitte's expecting that sports betting will drive 40% of all TV watching by men ages 25 to 34 years old, which of course is a very important demographic, particularly when it comes to sports. So it definitely can drive engagement there.